for those people who cannot go through the bureaucracy or don't understand it. There are language issues involved, or who get involved in, the business of the menu. If all else fails, can they contact you directly? And would you be able to help them over some of the hubs?
Of course, of course.
And that's really important, and right now they are seeing the connection to RSRT. So everything that Monica just described to you, try that first, of course. But if you find yourself against a wall, this is the lady and this is the place to go. Thank you. One or two more questions along these very practical lines, and then I have a few questions to ask you about your own personal family. I got conflicting numbers. I'm going to ask you a direct question. How much does the federal government allocate financially for research into Rett syndrome?
So research in the U.S. is funded mostly through the National Institutes of Health, the NIH. Their annual budget, total budget, is about $28 billion. And Rett syndrome is allocated about $10 or $11 million a year.
So let me make sure I understand this, Monica. The National Institute of Health has a budget of $28 billion. And of that budget, we're talking about $8 or $10 million going into Rett research?
The last few years it's been around 10 or 11 per year.
And of the money that's allocated for the research, how much actually goes to the scientists, and how much of that number is cut off for expenses?
So it goes directly to scientists. Scientists have to apply for funding. And it goes through a peer review process. And depending on what they call the pay lines, every institute has a pay line, meaning they fund 15% or 20% of the applications that come in. Right now the budget is quite tight, and the NIH budget has not gone up much at all over the last few years. And so the pay lines are very tight. So right now the chances of a scientist getting an NIH grant are quite slim. For some institutes it's between 10 and 15%. So it's quite risky, and scientists are quite worried actually right now. Also, when they apply for a grant, so say a scientist gets a $200,000 grant from the NIH, usually about half of that actually goes to overhead. So if they're at Harvard and they have a $200,000 grant, the laboratory gets $100,000 and Harvard gets the other $100,000. So of that $10, $11 million, it's only about half of that actually goes into the hands of the scientists.
So basically what we're talking about here is that in the United States, what the government provides that actually goes to the scientists who are going to find a cure, a reversal for Rett, we're talking $3, $4, $5 million bucks. Is that correct?
It's probably in the vicinity of between 5 and 6. Actually, in the labs of people that are doing.
I find it outrageous. I find it disgraceful.
There's a lot of diseases out there, and the NIH doesn't just fund disease; they fund basic science. So we have to compete with everything, really.
Well, that's
So-
the NIH, but the NIH is funded by the federal government.
Yes,
So, my outrage is that in the United States of America, $5 million is all we can cough up to try and put a cure to Rett. Those are my words, not your words, and I know you have to be a little bit more diplomatic than me. No, I have to ask you this because I know we live in inherently suspicious times, where people, they're kind of cynical when it comes to charities and causes because they've heard about all the stories of where the money goes. With RSRT, your group, I'm going to ask you directly, if I contribute $100, what percentage of my donation is going to go directly to the science, and how much will go to overhead or operating expenses or other things?
96%. 96% of every dollar donated goes directly to fund our research program.
Thank you.
We're lean. We're very lean.
So, again, 96% of every dollar pledged to the Rett Syndrome Research Trust, 96% is going to go directly to the science. You will affirm that to us.
Yeah.
Monica, a couple of personal questions and then I'm going to let you go.
Okay.
For you, this is not purely an intellectual exercise. It is not simply a scientific investigation, and it's not simply you being involved in a very worthwhile cause. Your daughter, Chelsea, suffers from Rett syndrome. We met Hannah at Jonathan and Heidi's house. I am told that her degree of Rett is in the top 2, 3, or 4%. Your daughter would be more representative of what happens when a child is afflicted with the disease. At the risk of being personal, and you answer as much or little of this as possible, tell me how Chelsea's doing. Tell me what Chelsea's present condition is, and tell me what it has been like with you and Chelsea for the past 13 years.
So Chelsea was diagnosed at around the age of 2. I started to notice that all was not well with her just after her first birthday. And she is a fairly classic case of Rett syndrome, actually probably on the more severe end of the spectrum. She is in a wheelchair. She does not speak. She cannot use her hands. She is fed through a feeding tube. She has very, very bad seizures, very frequent seizures, very debilitating seizures. She has a very irregular breathing pattern. She holds her breath. She hyperventilates. She has a lot of anxiety. She has trouble sleeping. She needs medication to sleep every night. So it's a very debilitating, serious 24-hour, 7-day-a-week disorder. She needs help to do everything. She cannot, when she's sleeping at night, if she wants to roll over, she cannot roll over. She cannot get herself into a sitting position. If she's cold, she can't pull up the blankets. She needs help with everything. She needs to be dressed, fed, toileted, bathed, everything. Now, that's the negative. The positive is she is a charming, social, thinking, affectionate, loving, gorgeous, if I can say that as her own mother, You know, she's a beautiful little, well, not so little, she's 14, she's a young lady. And she's mature, and I think she has a lot of wisdom. And, you know, I've seen her change the last few years as she's matured. I think she realizes what her situation is. I think that she handles it exceptionally well. I think if it was me, I'd be screaming from morning till night.
Monica,
Yes.
Chelsea has never spoken a word.
She had one word when she was 12 months. Duck, her rubber duck from the bathtub. She said it for a couple of weeks, and then she stopped saying it, and we've never heard a word since.
Do you believe that she is aware of everything that's going on around her? Is there a sense of understanding, a consciousness trapped, imprisoned in that body that's in that wheelchair?
She knows. Well, the girls with Rett syndrome are very well known for their eyes. Everyone that works with them, of course the parents and the family members, but everyone that comes into contact with these kids just notices their eyes, because their eyes are so alive and, you know, so they're so present, they're so bright. So yes, she knows. She knows she's in there. And I think she knows that we're working really hard to try to figure out a way to let her out. And she's...
So when you speak to her, you believe that she truly understands what it is that you're saying?
Yes. Some days better than others, depending on you know, what her body is doing to her at any given time, how anxious she is, and what kind of seizure activity she's had. But yes, I think she understands me. She understands a lot.
3 more questions. It's a personal question, and feel free not to answer it. Do you believe in God?
I do believe in God.
Monica, I try to live my life as best as I can, and believe me, I fall far short of the mark on more occasions than I care to share. But if I'm ever admitted into the gates of heaven, I have an opportunity to speak to God. I sure as heck am going to ask why, what the reason was for this kind of suffering. I don't get that. I don't get that. Do you ever think in those terms? Do you ever wonder why it was that your daughter had to be put through this experience? How do you deal with that issue?
Very early on, when we were worried that she might have Rett, but we didn't know for sure before the blood test became available. I mean, when we were coming to grips with just how disabled she was going to be. You know, I had a few weeks of why is this happening to me? Everybody I know has a healthy child. It didn't last very long, to be honest with you. And it very quickly turned into, well, why not me? You know, this happens. I mean, you know, a lot of people get mad, they get angry, they get mad with God. I never felt that. I didn't know, I never felt angry. Who was I going to be angry at? It's just nature. You know, it's statistics. 1 in 10,000, and it happened to us. Is it bad luck? Yes, it's bad luck, but it just wasn't going to get me anywhere to ask why and get mad. And so I never had those emotions. Now, there are days when, you know, I might feel sorry for myself and very sorry for my daughter. I have bad days. But on those days, I tend to think, you know, life is not fair. I mean, the people that died in the tsunami, people that die in earthquakes, people that live in Rwanda and watch their kids heads get chopped off. I mean, is that fair? No, life is not fair, and that's it. It's as easy as that. And I don't. I mean, that pretty. When I think about people whose life is just snuffed out just like that in a tsunami, you know, you can't feel sorry for yourself. It just very quickly makes you move on.
What keeps you going? Where do you find that inner strength to continue this battle?
That is a very easy question to answer, and that is research. The promise of research, the promise that Chelsea will have a better life, the promise that families won't have to go through, the heartache that we went through, and to see their child suffer. It impacts the entire family, siblings, grandparents. So the hope that other families won't have to go through this. And I often think about when the treatments come and we'll actually start to see Chelsea improve, what a joy and what an unbelievable feeling that will be. She probably will require still a lifetime of therapies to, properly recuperate. But, can you imagine actually going to therapies now with the expectations of seeing improvements, watching her learn how to walk, watching her learn how to use her hands, watching her, get some speech and acquire some language. I don't know. I imagine that's going to feel just unbelievably wonderful, and that's what keeps me going.
Last question. I know you're not a fortune teller, and I know you can't predict the future. But assuming for a moment that the funding is in place to assist the scientists in their discovery, will Chelsea get out of that chair and walk along the sand and feel the sun in her back and wrap her arms around you and embrace you and talk with you and listen in her lifetime, in the next 20 years, in the next 10 years, the next 5 years, 6 months? Any frame of reference, any indication of discernible hope?
Well, I, as you can imagine, I get asked that question quite a bit from parents, and it's a hard. I can't give. I can't say 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. We don't know for sure. And when you asked me that question, you said given appropriate funding, and I think that's a very important caveat, because on a couple of $1 million a year is going to take us longer to get there, that's for sure. So that's a very important piece of the puzzle. But given appropriate funding, meaning if we had funding to aggressively pursue all of the approaches, I think it's reasonable to say that within hopefully 3 to 5 years, there will be drugs, some of which are already in existence and being used for other diseases, that can be used perhaps in cocktail approaches to improve some of the symptoms. Now, that's not going to be a cure, but since the symptoms are so diverse and so horrible, if we can improve 1 or 2 or 3 of them, we would already have a big impact on quality of life. Now, to have more of an impact on the disease, that parents really want, that's going to take really addressing the underlying problem, gene therapy or activating the silent gene that can compensate for the mutated one. Those types of approaches are probably going to take longer. But I think it's absolutely, Chelsea's 14, so I think it's absolutely realistic to think that it'll happen in her lifetime and the lifetime of most of the girls that are alive today with Rett syndrome. That's certainly what we're, certainly our goal. Not to have this happen in some long distant future, but to to have it happen so that our children can benefit as well.
You have been so kind with your time, and those who are watching you right now just have to click the button on the right side of the screen and be in touch with RSRT, and check out your website and all the rest of it. And I trust that they will do exactly what their hearts dictate. I view you as one of the bravest women I have ever met, and a true role model. And it is just an honor to be in your company and to be of the little assist that I hope I can be in terms of your work. Thank you for talking with us tonight. God bless you.
Thank you, Elliot. Thank you for your time, your interest, your passion, your willingness to share your expertise. We appreciate it.
Good night, Monica.
Good night. Good night.
I never ask or tell anybody to do anything. You heard tonight from some people who were involved in something that you may not have known anything about a couple of hours ago. You know what to do. We also understand that there are people who don't have the ability to make a contribution to the trust. We know that. There are other things that people can do. They can offer time. They can volunteer. They can offer services. But mostly, and the purpose of this, is to spread awareness. Because when enough people know, this will go away. So look to your heart. Do the right thing. God bless you.